Take your filthy hands off that machine. The entire operations floor fell silent as the billionaire pointed at a black janitor. No one realized that the man in the worn-out uniform had just discovered what a team of million-dollar engineers had completely missed. Just minutes later, that single act of humiliation would push the entire company to the brink of collapse and force the billionaire to get down on his knees and beg the very janitor he had just fired for help. Don't miss a single second, because what happens next will prove that a person's true worth is never determined by the uniform they wear. Billionaire humiliated a black janitor, then froze when he saved the entire company. Take your filthy hands off that machine. The words cracked across the 29th floor like a whip. Every conversation stopped. Marcus Reed stood beside the open control cabinet, one hand hovering near a row of blinking relays. A gray janitor's uniform hung loosely from his shoulders. A yellow cleaning cloth protruded from his back pocket, and the knees of his work pants were dark from kneeling on the polished floor. Across the glass-walled operations center, 30 executives turned to stare at him. At the center of them stood Adrian Cross, founder and chief executive of Cross Meridian Technologies, one of the largest energy management companies in the country. His charcoal suit was cut perfectly. His silver watch reflected the white ceiling lights. Behind him, a wall of screens displayed maps of power grids, manufacturing plants, hospitals, and data centers connected to the company's control network. Marcus slowly lowered his hand. "I wasn't touching the main system, sir," he said. "I heard the relay clicking." Adrian's mouth tightened. "You heard a relay clicking?" "Yes, sir. And from that, you decided you were qualified to open a secured cabinet." Marcus looked at the small metal door hanging open beside him. The screws had already been loose. A burnt plastic smell drifted from inside, faint but unmistakable. "I decided somebody should look before it overheated." A few people exchanged glances. One of the senior engineers covered a smile with his hand. Adrian noticed. He stepped closer. "You are paid to empty trash cans, Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed, you are paid to empty trash cans, clean floors, and stay out of restricted equipment. You are not an engineer. You are not a technician. You are not even authorized to stand in this room during an executive systems review." The humiliation did not come from the volume of Adrian's voice. He never raised it. It came from the precision with which he separated Marcus from everyone else. Engineer, technician, executive, janitor. Each word placed him lower. Marcus felt the familiar heat rising behind his ears. He knew that heat. He had felt it in stores when security guards followed him through the aisles. He had felt it when landlords looked past his work history and saw only his skin. Elevator. He could feel the eyes following him. Some were amused. Some were uncomfortable. Most had already dismissed him. Just before the elevator doors closed, Adrian spoke again. "And contact the cleaning contractor. I don't want him assigned to this building after tonight." The doors slid together. Marcus saw his own reflection in the brushed steel. Tired eyes, graying beard, gray uniform, shoulders still straight. Then the 29th floor disappeared. Outside the tower, evening rain had begun to fall over Chicago. Marcus stood beneath the awning while employees in expensive coats hurried toward waiting cars. Water streaked the glass facade behind him, bending the lights of the city into long silver lines. His supervisor, Linda Alvarez, found him 10 minutes later near the loading entrance. She was carrying his termination form. "I tried," she said. Marcus took the paper without reading it. Linda crossed her arms tightly against the cold. "They said you violated a restricted area and interfered with critical infrastructure." The cabinet was already open. "I know. The relay was burning. I believe you." Marcus folded the form once. Belief was kind. It was not rent. Linda looked at him for a moment. "Why didn't you tell them about your old job?" He gave a small, tired smile. "You think that man was asking me who I used to be?" Rain struck the metal awning above them. Linda looked away. Marcus placed his employee badge in her palm. The plastic was warm from his body. "Tell Nate on the night crew the vacuum on 12 poles left," he said. "The wheel bearing's going bad." "You're worried about the vacuum?" "It'll scratch the marble." Something broke briefly in Linda's face. Marcus pulled up the hood of his old coat and walked into the rain. He lived 40 minutes south in a narrow brick apartment building where the radiators knocked all winter and the hallway smelled of cooking oil, laundry soap, and somebody's cigarette smoke. His granddaughter, Zoe, was sitting at the kitchen table when he entered. She was 12 years old, thin as a reed, with dark braids tied in blue ribbons. A half-built model bridge stretched across the table between stacks of homework. "You're early," she said. Marcus hung his wet coat by the door. Building closed early. Zoe studied him. She had inherited her grandmother's ability to recognize a lie by the shape of silence around it. Did something happen? Marcus opened the refrigerator. Inside were eggs, milk, mustard, and a plastic container of stew. "Nothing we can't handle." "That means yes." He took out the stew and set it on the counter. Zoe looked at the folded paper protruding from his pocket. "They fired you?" Marcus stopped. The radiator hissed. Finally, he sat across from her. "Yes." Her eyes filled instantly with anger. "Why?" "I opened a control cabinet." "At work?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because something was wrong." "Was it wrong?" "I think so." "Then why did they fire you?" Marcus looked at the bridge on the table. Thin wooden sticks formed 2 triangles over a cardboard river. One support leaned slightly inward. Because being right and being heard are not always the same thing. Zoe frowned. "That's stupid." "Yes," he said. "Sometimes it is." She pushed the model toward him. "My bridge keeps falling." Marcus examined it. He touched the weak support gently with one finger. "This joint is carrying too much weight. I glued it 3 times. More glue won't fix bad balance." He removed 2 sticks and shifted the angle of the support. Zoe watched him closely. "You always know how things work." "No. I just know how to listen when they're struggling." "To bridges?" "To almost anything." She smiled, but Marcus saw the worry remaining beneath it. His daughter, Tasha, Zoe's mother, had died 3 years earlier after a sudden brain aneurysm. Since then, the apartment had become a world of 2. An old man who had buried too many dreams and a child who still had permission to build hers. Marcus reheated the stew. They ate beneath the yellow kitchen light while rain tapped against the window. He did not tell Zoe that the rent was due in 9 days. He did not tell her that his savings would cover 1 month, perhaps 2 if they were careful. He did not tell her how tired he was of beginning again. Instead, he asked about school. Across the city, Adrian Cross remained on the 29th floor. The executive review continued for another hour. Nobody mentioned Marcus Reed. Elliot Vance delivered his report on the rollout of Atlas, the company's new artificial intelligence control platform. Atlas would coordinate power consumption across thousands of commercial sites. Hospitals, factories, data centers, municipal water systems, and transportation networks would adjust automatically through cross-meridian servers. It was the largest contract in the company's history. If the launch succeeded, Adrian would become more than a billionaire. He would become one of the most influential men in modern infrastructure. At 9:17 p.m., the first alarm appeared. It was small, a cooling fluctuation in server hall B. A junior technician reset it remotely. At 9:23, the temperature rose again. At 9:26, the backup cooling circuit failed to engage. The technician called Elliot. Elliot stared at the screen, then at the diagnostics panel. Everything showed green. At 9:29, a second server hall reported overheating. At 9:31, the main operations screens flickered. The maps vanished. For half a second, the room was black. Then every display returned in red. Adrian stood. "What happened?" Elliot was already typing. "We lost environmental control in the east server wing. Switch to backup. It isn't responding." "Why?" "I don't know." A low alarm began to pulse through the building. Not the sharp scream of a fire alarm. A slower sound. Mechanical. Measured. Almost calm. On the screens, system warnings multiplied. Cooling failure. Power routing error. Remote override unavailable. Atlas node instability. One by one, the connected sites across the country began reporting irregular commands. A medical center in Michigan received an order to reduce power to non-essential systems. A water treatment plant in Indiana received a command to shut down 2 pumps. A distribution warehouse in Wisconsin lost temperature regulation. The Atlas platform, designed to balance everything, was beginning to misread its own network. "Isolate it," Adrian said. "We're trying." "Do not try. Disconnect Atlas." Elliot looked up. "We can't." The room seemed to contract around those 2 words. "What do you mean you can't?" "The failover controller isn't releasing manual authority." Adrian looked toward the metal cabinet near the wall. The cabinet Marcus had opened. the cabinet nobody had inspected. A smell reached him then. Burnt plastic. Thin smoke curled from the seam of the metal door. Elliot ran across the room and pulled it open. Inside, the number 2 relay had melted into a blackened lump. For the first time that evening, Adrian Cross had no words. By 9:40, the building's emergency response team had arrived. Engineers filled the operations center. Calls came from hospitals, city departments, and federal regulators. Atlas was not simply failing. It was trapped in a command loop. Every attempt to shut it down triggered an automatic restart from a secondary server cluster beneath the building. The system believed it was protecting critical infrastructure from human interference. Adrian stood in the center of the chaos, listening to voices collide. We need the original manual sequence. It was digitized. The physical bypass. Decommissioned during the renovation. Who approved that? You did. Smoke thickened inside Server Hall B. The fire suppression system refused to activate because Atlas interpreted the heat spike as a sensor fault. A young engineer removed his headset. If the core reaches shutdown temperature, we may lose the entire network. How long? Adrian asked. 30 minutes. Maybe less. And the connected sites? The engineer swallowed. Some could fail unsafe. Those words carried images no one wanted to speak aloud. Dark hospital corridors. Stopped pumps. Locked transit controls. Thousands of people affected by a system they had never heard of. Elliot paced toward the cabinet, his face bloodless. There's a hard isolation junction below the old maintenance level. Adrian turned. Then use it. The junction was built into the original electrical architecture. The blueprints are incomplete. Find someone who worked on it. The building was converted 20 years ago. Adrian stared at the melted relay. Then he remembered the janitor's voice. Diagnostics don't always catch a physical contact failure. He turned to his assistant. Get me the cleaning contractor. Linda Alvarez answered on the second call. Where is Marcus Reed? There was a pause. You fired him. I know what I did. Where is he? I don't give out employee addresses. This is an emergency. So was that relay, according to Marcus. Adrian closed his eyes. Behind him, another alarm sounded. Ms. Alvarez, people may die. The anger left her voice. She gave him the address. Marcus was washing dishes when someone knocked at the apartment door. 3 hard knocks. Zoe looked up from the sofa. Marcus dried his hands and opened it. Adrian Cross stood in the hallway. He was no longer wearing his jacket. His white shirt was creased. Rain darkened his shoulders, and for the first time Marcus saw him without the shield of perfect control. 2 security officers waited behind him. Marcus said nothing. Adrian's breathing was uneven. The relay failed. Marcus held his gaze. I know. The Atlas network is locked in a command loop. Cooling is down. We cannot isolate the core. Marcus's face changed slightly. How hot? 123 degrees and rising. Fire suppression? Locked out. Secondary power? Cycling. Marcus looked back into the apartment. Zoe was standing now. Adrian stepped closer. We need you. The words seemed to cost him something. Marcus's hand remained on the door. An hour ago, I wasn't qualified to stand in the room. I was wrong. You said I was paid to empty trash. I was wrong. You had me removed. I was wrong. The hallway went quiet. A neighbor's television murmured behind a nearby wall. Somewhere downstairs, a baby cried and was comforted. Marcus looked at Adrian's face. He saw fear there, but not yet humility. Fear was what powerful men felt when they might lose something. Humility came later, when they understood what they had destroyed in others. Why me? Marcus asked. Because you identified the relay before any of my engineers. And because Linda said you used to work in industrial control systems. Marcus looked toward Zoe. She had heard everything. He could refuse. A part of him wanted to. He imagined Adrian returning to his tower with the taste of helplessness in his mouth. He imagined the board watching their great system collapse. He imagined the man who had humiliated him finally learning that intelligence did not arrive according to dress codes. Then he imagined a hospital bed going dark, a water pump stopping, a stranger's child caught inside the consequences. Marcus reached for his coat. Zoe ran to him. Grandpa. He crouched. I'll be back. That company fired you. Yes. And you're still going? Marcus looked at her for a long moment. People are bigger than the worst thing they do to us. Adrian heard it. So did everyone in the hallway. Marcus touched Zoe's cheek and stood. In the elevator, Adrian tried to explain the system, But Marcus raised one hand. Save the battery on your phone. My phone is fully charged. We may need the flashlight. Adrian stopped talking. The city blurred beyond the car windows as they raced north through rain. Marcus studied photographs of the server levels on a tablet. Modern conduits had been installed over older wiring routes. He recognized the original architecture beneath the renovations. This building used to be the Halpern Exchange Center, he said. Yes. My crew serviced the emergency transfer system during the conversion. Adrian stared at him. You worked there? For 11 months. Why wasn't that in your employment record? Your contractor asked whether I could lift 50 pounds and pass a background check. They didn't ask what I knew. Adrian looked down. The car continued through the rain. When they reached Cross Meridian Tower, the lobby was crowded with firefighters, engineers, security officers, and emergency personnel. Employees moved quickly beneath flashing amber lights. Marcus entered through the revolving doors wearing the same faded coat in which he had been dismissed. This time, everyone made room. Inside the operations center, heat pressed through the walls. The air tasted metallic. Elliot Vance approached Marcus with a tablet. The hard junction is 3 levels below the server core, he said. But there's no safe route. The east corridor is above temperature limits. Marcus studied the floor plan. This isn't the old maintenance map. It's the current plan. That's the problem. He enlarged the image. During the original conversion, there was a service tunnel behind the freight shaft. It won't appear here because they sealed the entrance. Sealed it with what? Drywall, probably. Maybe concrete board. Elliot shook his head. Even if it exists, the isolation junction requires a synchronized 3-switch cut. We don't know the sequence. Marcus handed the tablet back. I do. Elliot stared at him. How? Because I installed the labels. No one laughed now. Marcus removed his coat and rolled up his sleeves. The scar across his right hand shone under the lights. Adrian stepped in front of him. Tell us what to do. Marcus looked around the room at the executives, engineers, and managers who had watched him leave less than 2 hours earlier. First, stop trying to reboot Atlas. Every restart is feeding the loop. Elliot opened his mouth. Marcus looked at him. Do you want to defend the software or save the company? Elliot closed his mouth. Second, Marcus continued. Shut down non-critical internal power manually, floor by floor. Not through Atlas. Use building breakers. Third, call every connected hospital and water facility. Tell them to reject remote commands and switch to local control. A vice president shook her head. That will expose us legally. Marcus turned toward her. Then you can explain the lawsuits after people are safe. Adrian spoke without hesitation. Do it. For the next 7 minutes. The company moved according to the janitor's voice. Lights across the tower went dark in sections. Elevators stopped. Emergency lamps flickered on. Engineers contacted clients and regulators. Hospitals transferred to local control. Water plants disconnected from the network. The number of uncontrolled sites began to fall. But the temperature inside the core continued to rise. 134 degrees. 138. Smoke seeped beneath the server room doors. Marcus, Adrian, Elliot, and 2 firefighters descended the service stairs. At level B4, Marcus stopped beside a blank concrete wall near the freight shaft. There. Elliot swept his flashlight across it. There's nothing. Marcus knocked 3 times. The first 2 strikes produced a solid sound. The third sounded hollow. One firefighter used a rescue axe. The wall cracked. Dust burst into the corridor. Behind it was darkness. A narrow service passage extended beyond the opening, filled with old pipes, cable trays, and 20 years of undisturbed dust. Marcus stepped forward. Adrian caught his arm. You don't have protective equipment. Neither does the junction. Let the firefighters go. They don't know the sequence. Tell them. Marcus looked into the tunnel. It isn't just 3 switches. The load has to be heard. Adrian stared at him. Heard. The transformers rise and fall before transfer. Cut too soon, the arc jumps. Cut too late, the secondary bank locks. Then explain that. You can't explain a sound to someone while the building is burning. Marcus took a breathing mask from one of the firefighters. Adrian did the same. You're not coming, Marcus said. It's my building. That didn't seem to matter when you thought I was touching it. The words landed between them. Adrian did not defend himself. It matters now, he said. Marcus studied him, then turned toward the tunnel. Stay behind me. They entered. The passage was barely wide enough for one person at a time. Pipes sweated overhead. Dust softened every footstep. The red emergency light behind them faded until only their flashlights cut through the dark. Heat grew with each yard. Marcus moved slowly, touching the wall with his scarred hand. The old building spoke through vibration, a low electrical hum, the pulse of pumps, the distant rattle of metal under stress. Adrian stumbled once. Marcus caught him. For a brief second, the billionaire's weight rested entirely in the janitor's injured hand. Marcus steadied him and continued. At the end of the tunnel, they found a steel door. The paint had blistered. Marcus pulled it open, moved toward the first switch, and placed 2 fingers against the metal casing. He closed his eyes. "What are you doing?" "Listening." Beneath the alarms and the roar of ventilation, a pattern emerged. The dark. Across Cross Meridian Tower, the Atlas network went offline. In Michigan, the hospital rejected its final remote command and stabilized on local power. In Indiana, the water pumps resumed manual operation. In Wisconsin, refrigeration units restarted. Inside the operations center, every screen went black before returning one by one with a single line, core disconnected. Manual control restored. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the room erupted. Engineers shouted. Someone began to cry. Fire crews confirmed that the suppression system had activated. Calls arrived from client sites reporting stable conditions. The company had survived. More importantly, so had everyone who depended on it. In the dark isolation chamber, Adrian switched on his phone flashlight. Marcus was sitting against the wall. Blood ran from his right palm. "Marcus, I'm all right. You're injured. I've had worse." Adrian crouched in front of him. The light revealed dust on his face, sweat on his collar, and something unfamiliar in his eyes. Shame. Not the shallow embarrassment of being wrong in public. Something deeper. "I fired you," Adrian said. Marcus leaned his head back against the wall. "Yes. I humiliated you in front of the company." "Yes. You warned me." Marcus looked at him. "Yes." Adrian lowered his gaze to Marcus's bleeding hand. "Why did you come back?" Marcus breathed slowly through the smoke. "Because the people in those hospitals never did anything to me." Adrian's face tightened. "And because my granddaughter was watching." "What does that mean?" "It means I couldn't teach her that dignity is only something we keep when it's convenient." The chamber remained silent. This is the kind of moment that asks something of all of us. If Marcus's choice touched your heart, remember that kindness is not surrender, and forgiveness is not weakness. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who has every reason to walk away and chooses to save others anyway. The firefighters reached them minutes later. Marcus was taken to the hospital with smoke inhalation, a dislocated shoulder, and deep cuts across his palm. Adrian rode in the ambulance. At the emergency entrance, reporters were already waiting. News of the Atlas failure had spread. Camera lights flashed against the wet pavement. Journalists shouted questions about cyber attacks, negligence, infrastructure risk, and casualties. Adrian stepped from the ambulance. "Mr. Cross, was the system hacked? Did Atlas endanger hospitals? Who stopped the failure?" Adrian turned toward the open ambulance doors. Marcus sat inside while a paramedic wrapped his hand. For 1 second, their eyes met. Adrian faced the cameras. "The man who saved our network is Marcus Reed," he said. "He was employed as a janitor in my building." The reporters fell quiet. "He identified the mechanical failure before our executive team did. I ignored him. I insulted him. Then I terminated him for trying to protect us." A member of the legal team hurried forward. "Adrian, we need to review." He raised one hand. "No," the lawyer stopped. Adrian continued. "Tonight, Mr. Reed returned to the company that had humiliated him. He entered a dangerous maintenance chamber and manually disconnected a system that our highest-paid experts could not control. Hospitals remained operational because of him. Water systems remained safe because of him. Thousands of people will never know his name, but they are safer tonight because he chose to help them." Inside the ambulance, Marcus looked away from the lights. He was not smiling. He did not feel victorious. Victory implied there had been a contest. He had only done what needed to be done. The next morning, Zoe arrived at the hospital carrying the wooden bridge from the kitchen table. Marcus was awake, his hand bandaged and his arm in a sling. She placed the bridge beside his water cup. "It held," she said. He smiled. "Told you the balance was wrong." She hugged him carefully. On the television mounted in the corner, Adrian's statement played again. Marcus reached for the remote and turned it off. You're famous, Zoe said. Fame is loud. Were you scared? Yes. But you went anyway. Yes. Zoe sat in the chair beside him. Are you going back to work there? Marcus looked at the rain moving down the hospital window. I don't know. Adrian arrived an hour later. He came alone. No assistants. No lawyers. No security. He carried Marcus's janitor badge in one hand. The plastic had been cleaned. A crack ran along one corner. Adrian placed it on the bedside table. I owe you an apology, he said. Marcus looked at the badge. You gave one to the cameras. That was a confession, not an apology. Adrian pulled the visitor's chair closer, but remained standing. I saw your uniform before I saw you. I heard your job title before I heard your warning. And when you challenged my certainty, I used my power to make you disappear. Marcus said nothing. I've spent my life believing arrogance was decisiveness, Adrian continued. People praised me for entering rooms and never doubting myself. Last night, that certainty almost destroyed everything. He looked at Zoe. And your grandfather saved us after I made it clear I did not consider him worthy of respect. Zoe's expression remained guarded. Adrian turned back to Marcus. I'm sorry. The room held the words without softening them. Marcus looked at the man standing beside his bed. He saw no cameras now. No board. No audience to reward humility. Only a man waiting to learn whether regret could become responsibility. An apology matters, Marcus said. But it doesn't repair a system. I know. Do you? Adrian nodded slowly. Our board has accepted an independent safety investigation. Atlas will remain offline until external engineers approve it. Every contractor in the company will receive the same hazard reporting protections as direct employees. No worker will be disciplined for raising a safety concern. That should have existed already. Yes. And Elliot? Suspended pending investigation. Marcus shook his head. Don't make one engineer carry the sin of a whole culture. Adrian's brow furrowed. He dismissed the warning. So did everyone else. Including me. Especially you. Adrian accepted the words. Marcus leaned back against the pillow. If you want to change the company, don't just punish the last man who made a mistake. Change what taught him that admitting uncertainty was dangerous. Adrian sat down. For several seconds, he looked like a student rather than a billionaire. I want you to lead that change. Marcus gave a faint laugh. You fired me from cleaning floors yesterday. I'm not offering you a cleaning position. What are you offering? A role in infrastructure safety and field systems. Full authority to inspect, report, and stop operations when necessary. You would build a team that includes technicians, maintenance staff, contractors, and engineers. Marcus looked at his bandaged hand. I don't have the degree your company requires. I reviewed that requirement this morning. And it was written by people who confused credentials with knowledge. Marcus looked toward Zoe. She was trying not to smile. This is not charity, Adrian said. You are more qualified than the people who nearly lost my company. You mean our company? Adrian paused. Marcus nodded toward the television. You keep calling it your company. That belief is part of the problem. The engineers built it. The technicians maintain it. The cleaning crews see what leaks at night. Security hears what changes after hours. Thousands of people carry that building every day. Adrian glanced down at the cracked badge. Our company, he said. Marcus did not accept immediately. He asked for written protections for contract workers. He asked for scholarships for employees who wanted technical certification. He asked that Linda Alvarez be placed on the new safety council. He asked that every executive spend one night each year shadowing maintenance staff. At that, Adrian almost smiled. You want my board members to clean bathrooms? I want them to understand that no building is held up by job titles. Adrian extended his hand. Marcus looked at it. Then he raised his bandaged right hand. Adrian's expression fell. Marcus extended his left instead. They shook. 6 weeks later, the 29th floor operations center reopened. The melted relay had not been discarded. Marcus had it placed inside a clear glass case near the entrance. Beneath it was a small metal plaque. It did not mention Atlas. It did not mention Adrian Cross. It read, "Every warning deserves to be heard." Marcus entered the operations center wearing a dark blue work shirt with his name stitched over the pocket. There was no suit. He had refused one. Engineers stood around a rebuilt control cabinet while he reviewed the new mechanical bypass system. Linda sat at the conference table as a voting member of the Safety Council. Two former custodial contractors were now enrolled in company-funded technical programs. Near the glass wall, Adrian listened while a young maintenance worker described an irregular vibration in an air handling unit. No one laughed. No one told him to stay in his place. The meeting stopped until the unit was inspected. At sunset, Marcus left the tower. Zoe waited outside with her school bag and the model bridge tucked carefully under one arm. She had won first place at the city science fair. They walked toward the train station together. Behind them, the tower reflected the last orange light of evening. Thousands of windows glowed above the city, each one dependent on wires, hands, voices, and people most of the world would never notice. Marcus's old janitor badge remained in his desk drawer. He did not keep it as proof of humiliation. He kept it to remember the man who had walked out into the rain without surrendering his humanity. At the corner, Zoe slipped her hand into his. Marcus looked down at her bridge. The repaired support held firm. Neither of them spoke. The wind moved gently between the buildings, and behind them, high above the street, the lights of Cross Meridian stayed on.